with me.
Yeah. Yes, we do. So,
All right, perfect. All right, if we are in good shape to go, we may as well get started. And well, maybe we'll give it one more second since people are actively joining. It's great to see everybody. Hi, Hannah.
I think you can go ahead and start with your spiel and we'll catch everybody up.
Sounds great. Well, welcome everyone. So I'd like to officially open the meeting. Welcome to the City of Ann Arbor Parks Advisory Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. This meeting will be broadcast live on CTN cable channel 16 and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. If you'd like to speak at public comment, you can do so by calling toll-free 877-853-5247 or another of the published numbers and enter meeting ID number 940-7190-7291. And I think we'll start by calling the roll.
Sounds good. 1 second. Commissioner Bush.
Present from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Cavatail.
Present from Ypsilanti.
Commissioner Kraut.
Present from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner London.
I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Marson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Montague.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Perlowski.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Skyless.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Smith.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Redina.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Watson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
We have a quorum.
All right, great. It's great to see everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll start off with the approval of today's agenda. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda before we get going? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to our first public commentary period. We allot 3 minutes per speaker in these meetings. The commissioners will not respond, but we very much do appreciate people taking the time to join us with their thoughts. Do we have any callers on the line at this first comment period?
We have no callers for public commentary.
Okay, thank you. There will be a second public commentary period at the end of the meeting. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was March 19th, 2024. Any changes to discuss or a motion to approve?
I'd move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Great. Motion by Anne. Is there a second? Second by Therese. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes, please signal by saying aye or raising your hand. All opposed, say no.
I wasn't there, so I'll abstain.
All right. Thank you, Ruth. Wonderful. It looks like the motion carries. And with that, we'll move along to our presentation section. And today we have an update, I believe, from Broadway West. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a team available, but Andy Conway is leading that team.
Yes.
So he'll be here to help walk us through it. But I want to welcome everyone here to talk about the project today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. And you have right now already promoted to the panel Marie Clough, who's the president of the Lower Town Riverfront Conservancy, and myself, David Dorita from Lower Town Partners, who's helping with project management on the project. I believe Andy's out there somewhere, and I know he's most recently, and O'Neill obviously is our construction manager on the project. Let me give you the 30,000 foot on it, and I know there was some much more detailed conversations about certain particulars of how we're the kind of complex science project of installing a new bridge over the Huron River, and all sorts of fun things like that. But as a general matter, we are moving very close to a second phase of work. Most people saw the first phase of work commence last year after a July 31st, or excuse me, January 31st, 2023 formal groundbreaking that largely related to the environmental remediation and land balancing on the site. We are moving with the permission of the city toward actual work on the public space components of the project in the very near term, with the goal of completing what we have referred to from the very beginning as the baseline public space, which is all of the green space, all of the pathways, the bridge connection to the Argo, as well as such utility and public infrastructure like River Street itself installed, our goal by the end of this calendar year. So that is where, as I said, from a high level project perspective, where we are right now. I invite Marie or Andy to provide any color to that, but happy to answer any questions as well.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I wasn't on there before. Now I see my name up. Sorry, my camera hasn't been working, or else I would have it on. But yeah, so we are hoping to get started here very shortly with at least the clearing aspects of the project. So really, as it impacts the B2B trail, we have some clearing to do on the north side, which we are hoping to get started here in the next couple of weeks. And then, as David mentioned, we're going to be moving with the rest of the project as far as the overall Broadway Park West in the very near future. So if there's any questions you guys have as far as impacts to the B2B or otherwise, I'd open it to you guys.
I would love it, Andy, if you would take us through a little bit of the impact to the B2B. Josh was filling us in a little bit on how things would be moved, and it sounded like a very positive development. But if you want to say a couple of those things about how the rerouting might work.
Yeah, I mean, our plan right now, really, we're hoping to get started, like I said, the next couple of weeks. The initial clearing phase would just be really just a day's worth of work, maybe two at the most. And then it will be periodic work through the months of May, June, and July, with different work associated with the concrete abutments, the foundations, ultimately setting the bridge later in July. So we met with Josh and the guys from the Parks Department a few weeks ago, and we'll work in conjunction with them, giving plenty of advance notice. So we don't have exact dates on that stuff yet. I have Josh Goldsworthy with Anlon, our bridge contractors, on the line as well. So we'll be working together. We'll give you guys plenty of advance notice before any shutdowns occur. But basically what our plan is, we'll have more or less at the east and west ends of the B2B trail there, we'll have plenty of signage, construction barriers up, noting that the trail is closed. We'll have a sign showing rerouting, if you will, a suggested reroute to get back onto the B2B, which is pretty extensive. But as you can see here on this map, so a couple of things that might be added to this is that, so you'll see here where my cursor is down, right? You probably can't see that, but so from the Argo side, we'll have it closed down there with construction barriers. And again, at the east end, down at Broadway, we'll have it closed down there as we're doing work that requires it to be shut down. We'll also have, at the actual work site, we'll have that area barricaded. One thing that this plan does not note that we will also have is that during any time that we're setting the bridge or doing any work over the river, we'll have to close down the kayak launch that is just east of the dam area. But But again, we don't have specific dates yet, but we'll be coordinating that with Josh and his team well in advance of anything happening. But the first initial impact would again be just a 1 day or 2 day closure for us to get the trees cleared out of there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're excited about this part. We knew this is the one that causes the most potential disruption, but it's toward a vastly increased accessibility within the next several months to the system. And there's just, at the end of the day, no easy way to put a pre-built bridge over the river. And so it's something we all want to be able to watch happen, candidly. And I really got to give our engineering team, the team that has developed this particular component of it, and O'Neill, a lot of credit for figuring out the kind of least impactful way to get this done. I still remember it's getting on 5 or 6 years ago when the idea of adding this bridge to connect the Argo to the site came up. Everybody said, well, that's a great idea. And I said, yeah, we love that idea. And you know, we're excited for it to occur. But I'm glad nobody had asked me at the time, or I had not given much consideration to the complexities associated with it, because I might have said, no, we can't do that. And I think that would have been the wrong answer. I think this is really going to, you know, really change the entire face of this end of the riverfront for the better.
I see Anne has a question. Go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. I'm really excited to see this bridge going in and the improvements to the border trail. How many trees do you anticipate taking out in order to accommodate it? And my second question is, when do you anticipate that the bridge will be open to the public?
Andy, I'm going to let you take the first one, because I believe most of the trees are small scale, but I don't know if you've done a full tree survey yet. On the second one, our goal, Anne, is to get this phase of work we're talking about, which would include the bridge open to the public by the fall of this year. We're loosely identifying that as mid-September, and in fact planning as we speak for some activities to commemorate all of this at that point. But knowing that there's so much complexity to this, we're afraid to put a date out there. But Andy, you can speak to the actual number of trees removed associated with the bridge abutments. None on our side, if I'm not mistaken, at this point. It's all on there.
Sure, David. Yeah, and Josh can chime in as well. I know he's looked at it closer with his tree clearing contractor. I guess it's hard to identify the exact number because a lot of it's brush and kind of smaller trees, especially on the north side there. There are a couple of, especially on the south side, there is one tree that was identified on the plans as a landmark tree that will need to come down, but we've already, we've discussed that with the city, and mitigations will, I guess, take place to replace that tree, if you will. And I believe there might be one on the north side as well that we identified that it's in too close proximity to the foundations that it would die anyway. So it really needs to come out. But again, we'll have mitigations in respect to those trees. But Josh, if you have any other comments on it, I guess really, as far as I've looked at it, there's really just 2 large trees, one on the north side, one on the south side. Other than that, on the north side, it's mainly scrub and just small trees that need to be cleared out of the way.
Yeah, Andy, I think they're on the north side. There's 2 sizable ones. One is actually leaning over the river, so that should come out anyways. Eventually it's going to come down in the river. But we're trying to limit the amount of clearing out there just because of the trees. So right now we're targeting 20 foot of either side of the foundations. That's a minimum that we see that we need to be able to get this bridge launched, you know, and erected across the river safely. So, you know, two trees on the north side of size, and then, you know, the one on the south side. Other than that, it's scrubby brush and, you know, just that real scrubby stuff in the ditch there that auxiliary spill in.
I had a brief question. Just can you remind the group what the schedule is for constructing some of the structures on as part of the site? I know that that's not the first phase, but just to restate the timeline. Oh, Dave, I think you're muted. If you're there, you
To
go.
be clear, I want to draw a distinction between structures that relate to the public space versus the kind of commercial, residential, retail components.
Sure.
As I said, the required components. Oh, this is a pretty picture. The required components of the public space per our original zoning entitlement will be complete with this phase. Which we have referred to from the beginning as the baseline public space.
Yes.
The added components, which we are candidly still raising funds for, but you know, we believe the completion of baseline will help in that effort because people will begin to appreciate just how dramatically beneficial this location is as a public space. Include the pavilion, which you see in the foreground, and the ice ribbon, which you see immediately to its left in this picture. And those are certainly not on schedule to be constructed yet. As I said, we're still working towards funding. The rest of the buildings you see ghosted here are the commercial and residential components that, when the Lower Town Riverfront Conservancy has a park to run, become my organization's responsibility to develop. There is still a small prospect of some of that work commencing in this calendar year. But if I had to prognosticate, I would say spring of 25. And that just has to do with first of all, wanting to get the public components complete, which is going to take all of our time at the trajectory we're going on. And secondly, because the order of events with respect to that always called for the public space to be complete before, for instance, the residential housing would move forward. And there's a relationship between the residential and the hospitality in that score. So if I had to just sit here today, seeing what we've got to do on that site, from that pretty aerial that Andy showed you to this remarkable photorealistic rendering that Marie had developed, I would say we've got our hands full turning this into a world-class public space between now and the end of the year. And then what we will then do is turn that space over to public benefit, move the fence line back, if you will, and be building on these ghosted locations, as well as the pavilion and other components in the 25 to 26 timeframe. And so I think a reasonable goal for the completed project, in whatever form it finally takes, would be late 26 to early 27.
That's helpful. Thank you. I see Alexa has a question. Go ahead.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to make sure, kind of more approximately for the summer, I had to kind of wrap my brain around when the closures are proposed. So it sounded like there'll be kind of a clearing phase that's probably less intensive, maybe a day or two closure earlier in the summer. July was when you're setting the bridge. And just wondering if you could walk through, for that scope of the work of setting the bridge, how long of a closure are you looking at?
I could probably turn
Andy.
it over. Josh could probably detail that better than I could. But when we had met previously, The longest closure would be when we're doing the actual concrete abutments, the foundation work. That would probably be a couple weeks. Actually setting the bridge will take maybe a day, I think, Josh, right? That's one of the shorter durations. So what we're planning on doing is Anlon's plan is really to do most of the work from the south side with large cranes. So when we're doing the concrete piles and the foundation work and other things of that nature, they're going to be working from the south side, but we'll still need to close the B2B for safety reasons. But again, we'll nail down those dates as we get closer to it. But the longest closure would be, we were estimating 2 weeks when we do the concrete work. So, and Josh, maybe you could elaborate on possibly when that might be.
Sure. So our goal is to get in and out of that trail impact as soon as possible. So we're targeting hopefully the end of the month for clearing for that 1 or 2 day shutdown, and then to be out of the north end of the job by Memorial Day. So within the next 6 weeks, we're out of that north end of that job, impacting that border to border trail until we go to set the bridge in July, which will be a 1 day closure.
Great, thanks so much.
Anne, go ahead.
Will the cascades be closed also? While the border to border on the north side of that area is closed?
Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see a reason we would close the cascades.
Correct. That's not our intention, is to have to close those cascades. So
no, that certainly had never even occurred to us. So I'm glad to hear that it wasn't anyone's intention.
No, the only impact, Ann, would be when we do set that bridge, we would want to close. You have that one launch, I guess just east of the dam. So we'll put signage up there that not allowing anybody into the river the day that we're setting the bridge. We certainly can't have anybody kayaking under the bridge as it's flying over. So
and just some good things that launch there is primarily, in some ways there's for canoes, people that aren't going through the Cascades.
Right.
And really a lot of it gets pushed down river as well. So even for that day, we can go a little bit further down past the Cascades to launch down there. With regards to the Cascades, obviously during that time that the border to border is closed, Cascades are not impacted, but part of coming back up to go through the Cascades multiple times, that is where that is. And so ideally being done by Memorial Day helps reduce the flow of that time. And then just if you can speak about weekend work, because I know we've talked about that, and not impacting that as much as well. So
yeah, our plan right now is to not have any weekend work going on. So unless there was some kind of emergency need for it, which we would obviously coordinate with you guys, but right now our plan is just Monday through Friday, kind of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. type of standard schedule.
Or what we call overtime, which we're not interested in having, Andy.
Right.
So.
Right. OT not included right now.
Yeah.
Other questions for the team? All right. Well, I really want to thank everybody for coming back to update us on this. This is clearly a very significant and long-term project. We're very excited to see it take shape this year. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Anytime.
So with that, we'll move along to the next section of our agenda, which is our manager's report from Josh.
All right. Well, we will talk a little bit more construction along the river. We just wanted to give a couple updates on some of the things that are going on. The Barton border trail construction is underway, and the trails are closed as needed for construction. At this point, currently the contractor is working on the Oxbow Peninsula, and those are the trails that are closed. It is an exciting process. We continue to move that along, and the more that people can stay off of that, the better we can get the trail completed. But understanding that when work is not being done, there may be people that still get out onto the peninsula. So, some exciting news. The Barton to Bandamere Tunnel. The RFP for the tunnel has been put out to bid. And there's also a professional services RFP for construction firm to oversee the project. Those are due back in early May. We anticipate coming back to PAC with those details in June. But exciting news to move that along, which will kind of take place following the trail completion there. Speaking of bridges, Gallup Park Bridge is the bridge is being worked on. The contractor is Josh from Anlon, who was just on the call for the other one, is doing everything they can to accelerate it. I think we've got all of the challenges out of the way, at least at this point. And so we are working to get this done, kind of similar timeline. Hopefully will be completed by September, but we're doing everything that we can to get it moved, completed as soon as possible. So, Josh, I don't know if you have anything you want to say since you're on this call.
Just like you said, just trying to get it done as expeditiously as we can now that we're in the clear for the most part. So,
good,
putting it together.
With that, something really exciting. We don't talk about it enough, but we'll have Missy Stoltz from OSI come and speak about the work that's being done around the Bryant Community Center, probably later this summer. But exciting news, they just received a grant from the U.S. Department of Energy Efficiency and Conservation block grant to work on some geothermal down there. So timing of their process, typically that would come to PAC and then go to council, but because this is federal money, they're trying to get to council in May. So you're getting a heads up about this, but really exciting, $180,000 to support the installation of an on-site geothermal system, and expansion of solar at the community center to kind of really support not just the facility there, but the neighborhood as a whole. And then two more things. Programming update, day camp registration kicked off on April 3rd. We did a tiered process this year where we started with day camp and a few other programs April 3rd. We'll do swim lessons in May, and a couple other things, but overall the process went very smoothly. And about 24 hours later, our camps were 85% full. So that is always exciting news. And the last thing is an invitation. Hopefully you may have already received it about the bicentennial mural that is going up at Veterans Memorial. Council approved this an art mural for the bicentennial. It'll be this Friday, April 19th. Activities at Vets will be taking place from 2 to 5:30, with the official unveiling and ceremony from 5:15 to 5:30. So everyone is welcome to attend. I've seen it. It's fun. There'll be a cloak over it now, but it is unveiled already. So it's fun to see out there. Very, very bright, very lively. So please, if you have time on Friday, stop by and say hello. So other than that, that's all that I have for the update.
Sounds good. Questions for Josh before we move along? All right, excellent. So we'll move now to committees. If we have any updates, we'll go to RAC first. Is there an update from RAC?
I do not have an update for this meeting, so I will have something next month.
All right, sounds good. Is there an Environmental Commission update?
The Environmental Commission met last month. The two topics that they went over were some changes to the Green Streets program, which is a program to handle stormwater runoff in place, like on our streets. And then we talked about supporting, encouraging city council to support doing a phase 2 study for municipal electrification. So nothing terribly related to parks, as far as I can tell.
All right. Thanks very much. And I think heading now to our regular business, Josh, I think you're going to talk a little bit about the two resolutions we have, which are both related to budget. We want to talk about the year 25, fiscal year 25 fee adjustments, and then the proposed budget.
I'm going to go ahead and share a quick presentation that kind of talks about the process in a little bit more detail. Obviously, I sent out a lot of information, lots of numbers to look through, and we'll kind of go from there. So let me find my screen. Sure. All right, that's there. All right, everyone see my screen? All right. So I talked a little bit about it, but it's always good to have the timeline. So a year ago, council approved we did work for a 2-year budget. Council approved the FY24 budget and reviewed the FY25. Due to ordinance and charter, they can only approve one budget at a time, so that we head into the second year with a plan, but not an approved budget. So we were informed in October that there were no changes to the plan. So anything that needed to be done would be an impact for this upcoming year. In November, December, staff reviewed budgets, looked at impacts, identified needs and adjustments, and made proposals. Those were shared with the city administrator in January. Following some of his review, the kind of a impacts overview was presented at PAC last month. We are coming today for hopefully PAC recommendation on fees, as well as the proposed budget. For those that saw it last night, the administrator gave council his budget that included all of this, which will allow council and the community to review and ask questions for what will come in May of city council's action on the fees and proposed budget. Just a general kind of overview of parks from an expenditure budget plan. We are about a $19.4 million operation when we include both the parks millage as well as the general fund. This is up slightly from last year. We'll kind of go through it. Our percentages between millage and general fund remain relatively consistent over the last couple of years at about 40 to 42% for the millage and 58 to 60% for the general fund. Looking at the general fund, we'll speak about that first because that's where a lot of the information takes place. In FY24, we were approved to see a $5.3 million revenue with an expense of about $10.5 million, which costing the general fund about $5.1 million. This year, without any impacts, without anything, we would have seen kind of a continued increase of that total with salaries, with costs of things going up. We anticipated to see a slightly increased expense line and some increased revenue, but there was we're proposing roughly a $5.4 million revenue and 11.1 expense, so costing a little bit more, but we anticipate continuing to see hopefully some more programmatic growth in FY25. So again, what is different between what was presented and suggested last year? Some of the general revenue impact is through the idea, the goal of some fee increases to some programs. When I spoke to you last year, I really anticipated most of our fee increases coming in FY26. But for a number of reasons, we looked at a couple program that we felt needed to have some increases this year. Ruth, you've raised your hand in the middle, so I'm going to jump to you so I don't lose track of this.
Thank you. Sorry, just a quick question. This budget, I know you have lots of grants often for capital things. That's not part of this budget, right?
So all revenue. I mean, there's one more. I mean, there's a couple more fees that we go into. We have a major grants fund as the part of the city. So the $1 million that was received for bicentennial, that sits into a different fund. When we have grants for projects, so when we get a DNR grant to support delivery project, that goes into the millage. So that number will increase, that revenue will increase. We have some suggestions for grants, but unless we're sure of it or the money's received, we don't add that to that budget.
Okay, but so it would show up in the millage.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, these are the fee increases that we're suggesting. Going a little bit deeper into them. When we look at hockey, over the last number of years, we have seen some changing in the dynamics of our hockey programs, our adult hockey programs. We have seen a continued kind of positiveness with our more recreational hockey, so our individual draft leagues, as well as our lower level leagues within at veterans. We have, however, seen a pretty significant loss in our more competitive leagues. So these are what are called A and B leagues. Some of that had to do with some of the policies associated during COVID. We were very strict in all of our facilities in regards to what was taking place with masking and things with that. We also, prior to COVID, were running into some staffing concerns with those higher level leagues. Really, they demand a lot more. They tend to push the hours of operation a lot later, just because they're more. And then I think the other thing is that there's some other options in the area for people to do high level hockey at that point. We will continue to evaluate that balance between recreational hockey and competitive hockey and how we can best utilize our ice time that's there. But as we do that, it's really, really important that adult recreation hockey is not a loss for our facilities and our department. And this is a choice for adults. We want to provide an opportunity for people to play, but at the same time, it's pretty intensive with that one. So we identified, especially since the hockey fees have not been increased in a number of years, that we felt that this was an appropriate place to add some fees. As this group is fully aware, a year ago we did some restructuring of our swim team, going from separate programs to a citywide team that has been received overall, especially over the last year, kind of after the conclusion, very well. But we also realized that there were some inefficiencies and some revenue challenges with it. It is our goal to provide a quality experience and a chance for people to participate. But a swim team program that hasn't seen a fee increase for roughly 15 years, since about 2011, and the indoor program since 2013, and never seen an increase. We felt it was an appropriate time to kind of adjust some of that. These fees will go into effect either in the fall of 24 for the indoor programs or next summer 25 for the outdoor program. This has been a great deal for the community, but it is also very staff intensive with the number of coaches and lifeguards that are required for that. So that is one that we also felt was necessary. And then swim lessons. I mean, obviously last month, Gail, Scott, and Carly spoke about the pools, talked about the great work that they're doing both in group and public, or group and private lessons. This is very staff intensive as well. Kind of the benefit associated with living wage is that we have more people coming and working for us, but also staying longer, which continue to create great customer service, great experiences for our users, but also continue to create a higher cost for our instructors. And we also are attempting to do more options for our community. As I've said to a number of you at different points, my goal is to continue to find out how can we provide more swim lessons for those in need, and not just through a scholarship program, but what can we do holistically for the city of Ann Arbor to provide a service to ensure everyone in the city of Ann Arbor knows how to swim or knows how to get out of water if they fall in, type of thing. So, but in order to do some of that, we need to make sure that the higher level lessons do have a fee, appropriate fee associated with it. The last one is bridge at the senior center. And it's not all bridges, all bridge. The theme of the day is bridges. We offer 3 different bridge programs at the senior center. We have an instructional bridge program, which is a multi-week. It's a learn to play, learn the rules, and learn how to get better at it. We have a sanctioned program, the ACBL, which is really designed for more experienced players. And then we have a third program, which is kind of come as you are, just have a little bit of fun, which is non-sanctioned or unsanctioned bridge. It's open to all for a chance just to learn. Those fees have never been adjusted, and it's been, and I say never, since 2011. And really a lot of that is tied to a contractor. We have an individual who runs that program, and it's a per person fee for them. So they continue to get more people, but they also haven't necessarily seen an increase compared to some of the other staff. So that leads to that's the revenue side. I'll speak into the expense side with it. And this is really what drove some of the discussion about impacts this year. As we all know, coming out of the pandemic, both at home and at work, we see the impacts of increasing costs and a variety of different things as we look at all of our budgets. You know, during this time, having some reality of what the last couple of years have been, we worked with finance to really see where are some of our fees, some of our expenses at, and what are opportunities for us to grow and do things differently. So there are four buckets that kind of fall into our impacts, and I'll kind of go through those. Our fleet, so all of the machines that are part of our fleet, from mowers to vans to trucks, all of the things that we own are part of our fleet program. And we're coming into that time when many of these need to be replaced. This will be an ongoing thing. Unfortunately, the cost of replacement for these vehicles exceeded what we've put into our fleet fund. So we pay a fee so that when we have to replace, we should have it covered. But we all know that vehicles are a lot more expensive today than they were 5 years ago. Fortunately, fleet has worked to improve their rates, which hopefully we won't see these additional charges in the future. Supplies expenses, we continue to offer programs. As I mentioned, our day camp is at 85% after 24 hours. Fuller Pool day camp has increased from, I think, 60 kids pre-pandemic to I think they're going to be at 80 kids per week and this year. So we're seeing an increased usage. You tie that also into the fact that things are more expensive. Everything is a little bit more expensive associated with it. Pool chemicals continue to increase. Gas for some of our vehicles and things go up. We have outsourced a lot of our printing in the past a couple of years because of some things following the pandemic and a machine being out of order. So while that has increased this year, I do believe that will get more in line in the future. The golf cart lease, what is included in this, and mainly because a year ago it wasn't added when we increased the fees associated with golf course fees a year ago, which it should have been because we knew that there would likely be an increase with the new lease coming. The third bucket is staffing. We have continued to adjust to the new normal. Part of that is increased usage at some of our programs in our facilities. It is also, we continue to be extremely grateful for the increase that was approved by council with the living wage a year in 2022. This has provided us with high quality candidates that working for the park system and working for the system. The city is their first choice, not their last choice. So we have a high level of people that are coming in. And again, we have more people that are staying around. And so when we did the work with the living wage, we had to base it off of the experience that we had pre-pandemic. And what we're seeing after this is that we have more staff at a higher level, and staying longer, and more usage. So that is part of it. We are also working with our full-time staff. There's requirements associated with their overtime. We are working constantly to get them to the right balance between work and life. But at times when we have facilities open from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then there are staffing needs, sometimes that comes about. So we continue to my goal is always to get staff to not have to have overtime, because then they have a better work-life balance. But sometimes we need it, and I want to make sure that they're all being paid for the work that they're doing, and not looking to do anything else with that. The last bucket is something that I am constantly trying to address. Many of you have heard during my orientation that in 2005, 3, whatever year I give, it's not quite right, but it's close enough, that we were at 94 full-time staff members. When I took over as manager, we were at 38. So it is a goal that we are constantly trying to find quality staff at a full-time level, at a full-time option, to support everything that we do. And when we were looking at these, I really took an opportunity to look at some of the things we do in other departments, for other staff members, looking at how we utilize both the general fund and the millage, and really was able to find funding for an additional staff person by getting our balances right. I will speak, as I mentioned earlier, we are split 60-40 between general fund and millage, yet the manager's position has been 100% in the general fund for the last 15 years. I oversee both of them. I should have some dollars to be able to go towards that millage. So it's not the best way to always do this, but we felt that it was necessary. There was an opportunity to do it, and we were supported with adding this additional person in. So we are excited about that. From the millage point, I will speak about it. Obviously, revenue, this is primarily tied to just the taxable value that we are brought in. We adjusted for grants, we adjusted for things when they come into play, but that revenue is primarily tied to the funds we receive from the millage. With the expense, we try to keep it in line. There's always a little bit of overages because we are aware that there are some grant funds. There are some things that we won't be as high on expense wise, but we really work hard to kind of keep the anticipated increase, both in revenue and expense, right around the same. And so to be about $3,000 off in that change is where we're at. And really, what are the major impacts to this? And again, when I speak to impacts, everyone's cost of living increases, the ability to run our business last year is what we do. The impacts are anything beyond that. So with this, again, we saw a number of vehicles that are millage related that need to be replaced. So we're seeing that increase there. And then that salary adjustments that I spoke about as I looked at the 5 or 6 different people that we're adjusting to get more in line of their actual use between general fund and millage created that savings on one side, but there's an increase on that on the expense side, on the millage side. So with that, I've talked a lot, I've shared a lot, I've tried to give you an overview of where we got to. But I also sent you a whole lot of information that you can we can talk about now.
Therese, go ahead.
I noticed that in a lot of where the fee increases are, a lot of them haven't been increased in a long time. I was wondering if you could just, and this might just be because I'm newer, but if you could give me some history of how you decide increases, if it's a yearly thing, every 5 years, and how that kind of looks for the future.
It is a good question. I can speak historically as we have used increases at various times based on when we needed to make the budget right. So at different points, we have seen there's maybe a 5% cut that the city is going on. And so we utilize fee increases with that. So we kind of, in some ways, we hold some of them. So when we need to do that, I am still figuring out exactly how I want to do this moving forward. I think that there's some good in that. I also think that in the example of the swim team, we're so far behind that we're really not, we're impacting us now more than we think we are. And so I think there'll be a bigger conversation. You know, a year ago, I spoke to many of you. I anticipate us coming to the table for FY 26 and 27 with a holistic look at all of our fees and understanding where we're at with those, so that we can have the right conversation to move forward. Along with that is we have to make sure that we have a better, more proactive, and easier scholarship program for our community. I wasn't expecting fee increases this year. We're working to have something in December on that side of it. But it's not just scholarships, as I mentioned with the swim lessons. How can we do stuff? How can we make sure that the services that we provide for the right reasons are affordable or free for residents that we can utilize? So that's my holistic look at it. And that may mean that we need to go with a 3% yearly increase. The challenge is when you offer, when your introduction is, or your admission fee is $6 and you do a 3% increase, it's like, it gets into weird numbers. And so we try to find the right time to do it. So.
Yeah, holistically, I think the increases here seem very reasonable, but I do think like when the percentages look a little crazy, it's because it just hasn't been done in a while. And I just wonder, even if it's not being increased every year, if this kind of research, which I know takes manpower in itself, is worth scheduling at some point, even if it's not every year, at some consistent interval.
Yes. I mean, I do believe it. And I think that we will continue to be better at that and figuring it out. And I think we always look at it. I mean, I will say that staff, all the research that we do and all the time we do, I just think that we've historically just thought a little bit more about holding on to some of them, which does create that percentage increase, which nobody likes, but we understand. So.
Sure. I just want to say thank you. I thought the research and the comparisons were extremely helpful and thorough.
Alexa, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I echo a lot of Teresa's last comments. I was curious, I think you broke down really well kind of what's in the general fund and what's in the millage side. And just being newer, wanting to understand, we're having a great conversation, I think, about kind of the asset plan and getting ahead on some of the big capital pieces. I would just love a maybe kind of operations to capital. Do those sit also in both sides? Or I'm just curious where some of those pop up as we've come across some of them.
Yeah, and I think it's good. There's an entire list, and I'll send a breakdown because one of the things that'll be coming next month is we will have a discussion about the millage, because the millage is up at the end of this year. And so we'll be talking about kind of what that means. In the easiest context to your question that you just asked, it's not easy, but I'll get to it. Capital improvements, capital maintenance, all comes out of the millage. So the work that Hillary and Adam do, the stuff that's going to come from an asset management plan, and even the ADA plan is all going to really kind of tie at this point to the millage. In addition, within the millage is the NAP program. So natural area preservation is paid completely out of it. The Give 365 is paid completely out of the millage. We have forestry funds that are part of that. And then when we go into maintenance and improvements that are not capital, so some of the work that just has to be done by Scott's team, that comes out of the millage as well. So that's why, so there is operation with some of the facilities, some of that there. All of the operations tied to running our facilities. So that the lifeguards, the golf staff, the canoe liveries, that all is general fund, as well as a lot of the administration, a lot of the overhead for the city staff. But also when we talk about mowing, when we talk about snow plowing, some of those routine maintenance components come out of the general fund. So I'll give you the longer list. There's some things that can be paid out of both as well, but I'm happy to, I'll share that after the meeting as well with all of you.
No, thanks. That's really helpful. Just high level, just trying to look through where that fell, and helpful to know some of those conversations will come on the millage side. So thank you for that.
Other questions or thoughts, comments?
A question about sort of like elasticity of some of these fees. Last year, I know we did a few fee increases. I think the ones that came the most to mind were around livery. Did we see any changes in utilization based on that we could attribute to that? I know it's kind of hard to tease out if there's not there in any number of things, but yeah,
it's an easy question to answer, Councilmember, because the fees for the liveries and the golf courses started at the beginning of this season. So we don't necessarily
so it's too short.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really seen it, because it's really hard to state on June 30th, you pay one rate for this program, and on July 1st, you pay another one. So we try to balance that out with the appropriateness with it. So even when we speak about some of these fees, as I mentioned, the swim team, we'll see, we'll the next indoor season will be when the fee goes up for the indoor lessons, and then next year, not this year, the outdoor programs will take into place. It's not a perfect system. The bridge fees will start in the fall. So as we get through the summer, because we can't change fees until you and your peers approve fees, which means that's in May. And we can't,
it's late in the season.
Yeah, it's a tough one. So, no one has jumped at it. There's not been much feed. I mean, we haven't heard anything yet. And so I think most people won't remember how much they spent on a livery on a boat trip last year. And so I think there's a component of that. So.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and I mean that's kind of my expectation. I mean, even just looking at some of those increases were something like 40%, but I think in nominal terms, it was no less than, it was no more than the $25 for the hockey. So I think that's always a good perspective. And, we council member on our council side, we haven't heard of anything about the increases in fees. So I think that's a good thing to remember as we assess them.
Ruth, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's not directly related to the fees, except that, Josh, I was glad to hear you say that you want to look at how we can make scholarships more accessible. And I hope that's something we can have a longer discussion. But related to that, when you, I think we should also maybe think about timing. Like when you said in 24 hours, 85% of our summer camps are filled out. And I know that people who have less money tend to wait later. So I hope as we think about that, we can also think about some timing things.
And what we have tried to do is hold spots for scholarship component. So we don't, so if our capacity is 80, you know, we hold 5 to 7 spots per week, kind of in that point. And we find that balance of how do we do that correctly? You know, at what point
do people know that though?
we work with our scholarship individuals. So I mean, again,
okay,
we are, and this is where we're at. We're more reactionary. So we work with the people that reach out to us. And we provide that information. And so we give them a little bit more flexibility on payments, on those different things with that. But how can we be more proactive and kind of do that? Because you're right. It is, I mean, it's part of the reason, it's part of the reason we moved our registration to April. You know, it is a lot of money to sign up for 10 weeks of camp or 3 weeks of camp. And so, you know, it gives us some flexibility. And we tiered our registration so that you weren't signing up for day camp and swim lessons and this all at once. So, I mean, regardless of your financial impact, it's a little bit less. So, yes, it is something. I mean, I come from the I worked 16 years for the YMCA. I believe very strongly in what we need to do, and I think that we have an opportunity to do even more with some unique things within the city. So those are all things that we'll be focusing on in the next 6 months, and we'll have a robust conversation about scholarships as we get to it, and I'm excited about that one as well.
I'd just add on that, Josh, I think that the staggering is great, not only for the cost, but also kind of the access side of like, there are people who wake up at 7 a.m. and are like ready to hit go, and just giving people more time to actually hear about it, I think is really, the fees matter, but I think also the time is really useful. So appreciate that component of it and didn't want to lose that side of it.
Thanks, everyone, for these comments. Are there other comments or questions before we move to the actual resolutions that we need to consider today on the budget? So we have 2 resolutions. The first one is one particularly around the fee adjustments. You all have the text of that resolution and a memo. Any comments or questions on the language of that resolution or a motion to approve? Oh, I see. Thank you. Go ahead, Tisha.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I think Vince beat you to it by a hair's breadth. All right, so I have a motion by Tisha and a second by Vince. Any comments or questions, additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signal by saying aye or raising your hand. All opposed, say no. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. The second resolution that we have is on the proposed budget for Parks and Recreation Services. Again, you have the text of the resolution and you have a memo and the accompanying documents. Any further commentary or a motion to approve the resolution? Just before the motion, this is one of the unique things that PAC does have. PAC's recommendation for the budget is part of the responsibility. It is not every commission has this, so I do appreciate you looking at this, the questions associated with it, because this one really does come from you. This is a resolution from PAC to council in support of what staff have done. So I hope you appreciate the uniqueness of that, and I appreciate your support through this and everything else. So. Ruth, go ahead.
I move that we approve fiscal year 2025 proposed budget for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Rachel, thank you very much. A move by Ruth, second by Rachel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signal by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Great, the motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll turn now to the last piece of business that we have today, which is PAC officer elections. As it turns out, my term is coming to an end. This is my last meeting as chair of PAC, and it's been a fabulous experience. I want to thank everybody. I will be on PAC for one more meeting, but I won't be chairing it because we need to have officer elections, and we'll have a new chair next month. I'd like to, today we're going to put on the table the election of the next PAC chair. And I would like to start by nominating Anne Marsan, who has served as a PAC vice chair during my term as PAC chair. I'm thrilled to support Anne in acceding to the presidency. But certainly we'd like to entertain any other nominations that that folks might have. I think that silence might mean a wide swath of support for Anne's nomination. I'm going to go ahead and nominate her. Is there a second to that nomination?
I second.
All right. Perfect. Moved by me, second by Tisha. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye or raising your hand. All of Josh, you're not allowed to vote. All opposed, say no. Excellent. I'm thrilled to announce that Anne Marsan will be the next chair of PAC starting next month. And Ruth, go ahead.
Just curious, Anne, are you planning on staying on the Environmental Commission, or will that mean that we need to find someone for that?
That's an excellent question, and I actually thank you all for your confidence in me. I appreciate that very much. And I was going to also say that if there's anybody who is particularly interested in serving as the liaison to the Environmental Commission, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can let you know what all is involved. It's very different commission from this one, but I certainly have found it interesting and meaningful. So, but that said, I think my life is pretty busy these days, and I would be happy to hand that off. I've been that liaison for several years now, and I'm willing to share that opportunity with others.
Yeah, and the nice thing with that is we get the opportunity to. We just need to appoint someone. There doesn't need to be there doesn't need to be a vote. It doesn't need to be anything. It's just simply being appointed. And so I hope that somebody will consider that.
And if someone is interested in serving, should they email you, Anne, or you, Josh?
Both?
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Both? Okay. Perfect. The other officer that we typically elect is that position that Anne is vacating, that of vice chair. We're going to have that vote in May next month. Is that right?
Yes, we're a little late on a couple conversations. I mean, unless somebody wants to make a nomination, then, for their peers, but I don't think, since there was no other nominations for chair, I think we'll wait on that. We'll have a few conversations. We've targeted a couple people, 1 and 2. So we'll come back to this group in May with that vote. So.
All right. Very good. Well, that being the case, I think we are at our second public comment period. Do we have any callers on the line for public comment?
We have no callers for public commentary.
All right. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Ruth.
Lauren, before, I don't know if this is the right spot, before we adjourn, which I think is probably next, I wanted to suggest something to everybody on PAC, if I can. I have signed up for the Visit Every Park Challenge, which is something that the Parks Department is doing. There's maybe we can send out the link afterwards, Josh. But anyway, I'm having a very good time going to. I did visit a lot of the parks that I hadn't been to during COVID, but I didn't get to all of them. So I want to encourage people. I think it's something that we should probably all do. And if anyone wants to take some park walks during the summer, just let me know.
That is
I'm
fabulous
interested.
idea.
Yeah, it is one of the wonderful things that came out of COVID. Give 365 started it as people were doing it. And there's a whole series. You get if you do X number of parks, you get X, you get something, Y something. It's really fun. So I will send that out. I got a couple follow-ups. I'll send some of the other things, but I'll include that as well. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Ruth. All right. I think with that, we have concluded our business for the day and we will stand adjourned. The communications are in your packet. Thanks for your hard work in preparing for this particular meeting today, and great to see everyone. Have a great afternoon.